you have any thoughts, concerns, comments, constructive criticisms, just don't be rude, whatever it may be, get them in the chat, leave them on Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, wherever you're finding us. Maddie, how are you, man?
I'm great. The NBA is back, so this is like the best day ever. It feels like Christmas. Is this the longest All-Star break of all time? I feel like it's been
It at least feels
7
that
days.
way.
It feels that way, and it's also, I think it's a couple days longer than usual. So yeah, I'm ready to go.
Must just be an extended celebration of the 75th anniversary season. Yeah, I don't know why we had the extra time or felt like extra time. Whatever the case, it has been a solid week since we've had any games, and it is time to get back into this. And what I love from either a sports betting perspective, and we'll look obviously at the DraftKings Sportsbook or DFS for anyone who needs help setting their lineups, is we have a couple of games tonight. They're not all necessarily super compelling games. That's sort of another conversation entirely. But you have a couple here when it comes to spreads that are just massive. Like, guys, forget the rust. They're going to be coming out shooting, man, because you have got the Grizzlies and Timberwolves over under of 240 points, same number as the Hawks and the Bulls. Which of these games interests you most, or is it both?
Yeah, I think it's both. And it's not because of the totals. These are actually two of my favorite games as far as point spreads, not really the over-unders. Like, I just don't have a strong feeling. I mean, 240 in theory is too high, and you should just bet an under every time you see a number that high. But these are potentially some of the fastest paced games we've seen all season. So I'm inclined to just say that the 240 points for both of those is pretty accurate. But I think that the Grizzlies and the Chicago Bulls are two of the teams that overachieved in the first half to the largest extent. It's for different reasons. Like, the Grizzlies, I think, just were able to manage injuries and COVID issues and all of that due to having a lot of depth. And as other teams get healthier, I just think we'll see them come back to earth a bit. Even in games where John Morant didn't play, they had Tyus Jones, they had DeAnthony Melton. So I think the Wolves are probably about as good of a team as the Grizzlies. Getting 2 points at home feels like a really strong value. And then for Chicago, I just don't see any way they can continue to score at the rate they were scoring. This is like, I say what you want about DeMar DeRozan. Maybe he deserves some MVP consideration, but I just think that this is a team that's overachieving, and regression to the mean is going to hit them to some extent. And I think the opposite is true for the Hawks. We actually talked about the Hawks 2 nights ago with Chirag, how this is a team that I think we all kind of expect to play better coming out of the break. Clint Capella was dealing with some conditioning issues. John Collins is still out, but I think this is a really deep team. So I think the Hawks at +3, one of my favorite bets tonight. The Wolves at +2, also one of my favorite bets. And yeah, those should be fun games, both of them with the high totals.
What about outside of those two games? We'll get to DFS, but just sticking with the DraftKings Sportsbook right now, other games that, you know, have really have you interested? You know, if we're to go kind of in order, because we can bounce around a little bit, but just sort of rifle through each one kind of quickly. You got the Cavs and the Pistons. Cleveland is, of course, Detroit is dreadful. Cleveland is 6-point favorites on the road right now. Not unlike the game that follows this one, the Celtics and Nets, not expecting a ton of offense, you know, both lower totals, obviously, for these two games. So what do you think of these two?
I've leans here, and really for the first 3 games that are listed. My strongest take, aside from the 2 I mentioned already, is going to be for Denver versus Sacramento, where I like the Kings as underdogs. But for the games that we're talking about here at the top with the 7 and 8 o'clock starts, we got news that Darius Garland and Karis LeVert are going to be out, which moved the line from Detroit +9 all the way down to Detroit +6. And the total came down from, I think it was 211. Now it's 209. My hunch is that these corrections are not quite far enough on both fronts. Like, I think the Pistons have a little bit better of a chance than the +6 gives them credit for, and the total probably should be a little lower just because Cleveland's missing both of their guards. We're going to see a bunch of Rajon Rondo and Brandon Goodwin and Chetty Osman. It's a significant downgrade, and they're missing 2 of them. And we've also gotten a ton of line movement for the Celtics, who opened, I think, -4.5, and this line's all the way up to 9.
Which still, by the way, feels too low when there's no Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons, Goran Dragic, Joe Harris. Like, the Nets are, I mean, talk about potential value all over the place.
Yeah. I think you're right. Like, I'm still leaning Celtics. I don't want to bet the Nets even at this number. Like, I think it would have to get to double digits before I'd start to consider Brooklyn for this game. Part of why it's moved so much is I thought Marcus Smart would still be out following the break. Like the ankle injury looked pretty bad for him against Philly. So that's a bit of a surprise he's playing. So maybe that, like, is that enough to have moved the line this much? I guess there was some speculation too that Kevin Durant might play or that Ben Simmons might play. Kyrie Irving, I think we knew wasn't going to be able to play for this game. So
still can't play in Brooklyn.
Yeah, at least not yet, maybe soon. But
yeah, it sounds like that could be changing, but for now,
at least for this game. So maybe there was some speculation that maybe it could have changed by this game, but it's not. The Celtics are fully healthy. The Nets are nowhere close to fully healthy. So it makes sense this line is up to -9. I think you could argue it could be a little higher. And then the game that comes up right after this, the Suns and the Thunder, I think people might be overreacting to Chris Paul. These are players that are not household names, but the combination of having all of them out, despite the fact that SGA is back, I think that's still pretty relevant. Like, it might seem weird that the Suns are still -10.5 on the road with no Chris Paul, but if anything, I think this line might be too low, actually. Like, this Thunder team is really, really weak compared to even compared to what they usually are. Like, they're missing half their roster, basically. And then just to tease this for tomorrow too, I think we actually have a line for tomorrow's OKC game. They're +7 at Indiana, and I'm pretty sure it's there if you scroll down.
Let's see.
Yep, correct. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is coming off an injury. Like, I would guess he's not back. He's not playing the back-to-back. So I'm already looking at Indiana -7 for tomorrow's game, just to kind of follow up on that. They're not going to have these other guys back in the lineup, and I think we could see SGA get the night off tomorrow. So yeah, maybe I'll just bet against the Thunder twice at the same time. Just take tonight's game and tomorrow. I don't know if you can parlay those, but either way, like, I think it's being undervalued how much they lose by not having Dort, Jerome. And then in the front court too, I think Mike Muscala is reasonably important. Derek Favors there's no way Derek Favors is playing both legs of a back-to-back. So tomorrow's Thunder team could look even worse than tonight's Thunder team.
What's your view of the Warriors Blazers? A game that, kind of mid-tier when it comes to obviously the offensive output that's projected. 227 is the total right now. 10-point favorites, the Warriors on the road, as we know, one of the top teams in the NBA. But there's still no Draymond Green, no Andre Iguodala to the extent that you believe he's super meaningful. Gary Payton is currently a game time decision at last look. On the other side, though, for Portland, there's no Damian Lillard, there's no Yusuf Nurkic, there's no Eric Bledsoe. Is again, like, just to look at games and it's like, man, is 10 points big enough a gap? Do you think the spread should be even larger than it actually is?
I think this is about right. It's definitely a big deal that Yusuf Nurkic isn't playing, but I think the Warriors are just generally a bit overrated. Like, the Draymond Green loss has clearly been a problem for them. So 10 feels about right. When Nurkic did get ruled out yesterday, though, the line was 7.5. So moving up to 10, I think, is justifiable. But the other relevant thing is the total, which was 223.5 at the time and has gone up 3.5 points. I think you could actually argue that it should have gone up higher. And if we get Gary Payton scratched later, because he was added to the injury report a couple hours ago, he's probable, but that came out of nowhere. Like, it wouldn't be shocking to see him not play. He's dealing with a leg injury from before the All-Star break. Gary Payton is a defense-first player, but Nurkic, I don't think people realize the extent to which the defense might fall off without him. Like, they don't have another rim protector after Nurkic at this point. When he missed games earlier in the season, Robert Covington was able to kind of pick up the slack there, Larry Nance a little bit. Trendon Watford is a very undersized center. And I think also what likely happens is if Nurk is not out there, and this could be pretty DFS relevant too, if Nurk's not out there, the Warriors don't need to play Kevon Looney as much because they don't need the bigger body to guard Nurkic. Otto Porter Jr. can guard Trendon Watford. I mean, Watford is, I think, like 6'8". He's not nearly as dynamic or as big as Nurkic. So I think if we get Nurkic, or we do have Nurkic off the court, I think that speeds up the game. It makes the defense for Portland worse. I don't think it hurts Portland's offense all that much. And then if we get Gary Payton off the court, that's going to make the Warriors defense worse and also potentially make their offense better if they're playing guys who can score, like Jordan Poole gets more minutes. So this could become a really, really high scoring game. I think this could be a sneaky one to stack too, because I don't think too many people are looking at Steph Curry tonight. And I don't think too many people are looking at Anthony Simons at his increased price tag. So this might be a sneaky shootout, and especially because we have two games like we talked about with totals around 240 points. This one's only 227, but it would not surprise me at all if this one ends up having a final score that's above 240 also.
We won't spend any time on team futures, player awards, that type of thing, because as you noted, we did a lot of that with Chirag back on Tuesday night, and everything that we talked about, folks, I think those lines are mostly the same since obviously this stretch run, this final quarter of the NBA season hasn't yet begun. So still very relevant commentary. If you want to go back, look on the DraftKings YouTube page or one of our Twitter pages, the retweets from the DK account, going back to the Tuesday show again, about 48 hours ago, dove deep into all of that if you want to look at it. But DFS, looking at people who look to make lineups tonight, there are a wide range of contests, obviously, with the return of basketball in the DraftKings lobby. This one that I'm looking at here, NBA $100,000 return from break special, $25K to first. It is $15 to enter. It looks like it's about half full right now. Or half empty, depending on your perspective. But we got the 7 gamers. So a lot of studs are obviously available. You got Joker, who is far and away the guy who's projected to have the most points, right around 61, 62 right now. Next on the list would be someone like Trae Young, who's right around 50. You also have Karl Anthony Towns, Ja Morant, Steph, who you mentioned, Devin Booker, Jason Tatum, DeMar DeRozan, Nick Vucevic. All those guys are projected kind of in the neighborhood of like 45 plus points. But obviously you got to look at salaries and see, okay, who do I think is a really compelling play? To me, it probably comes down to, not to say any of these other guys that I mentioned couldn't just go off, because of course they could, but for their dollar, for their price point, $8,800 Devin Booker and even $9,900 Trae Young. What do you think of these two guys in particular?
Yeah, there's no way to say these are bad plays. Like Booker's way underpriced. I think Trae Young is probably underpriced too. The pricing for this slate probably came out, if I had to guess, before we knew that Chris Paul was injured. So yeah, Booker is the best value from this tier. He's going to be popular. Like there's no way he's not the chalk. So I think structuring your lineup in a way where you're not hurt by that too much is important. Like, I don't think I want to play Devin Booker and Aaron Holiday in the same lineup because I think the Suns are shorthanded enough that Holiday is likely going to be out there for garbage time if that happens. Booker almost certainly won't be. And especially the Suns play tomorrow. So if they're up 25 points in the fourth quarter, I don't think there's any way Booker is out on the court. It's not whether or not you play Devin Booker. I don't think he's a must play by any stretch. I think he's a good play. It's just if you're playing him, you have to be a lot more careful about winding up with the exact same lineup everyone else is. And then Trae Young too, like that's such a good game environment. Like we talked about, the Bulls defense is clearly the worst part of the Bulls team. And the Hawks are a little shorthanded too, which probably helps Trae Young. John Collins is out, so it's a little more scoring responsibility. And then if you take Lou Williams out, who's questionable, maybe that's just an incremental bump for Trae Young. Maybe it's like an extra minute or two he has to play. So I do like both of those guys. I don't have a super strong take though, as far as who I like at the high end. Like you really can make a case for almost anyone on this slate because there are just a lot of good players that are in good matchups, like we've talked about already.
The chalkiest, at least projected player, and it's also a very chalky value play. So, we're not talking about the Devin Bookers, that top tier as we were getting into, but Rajon Rondo at $3,900 projects to be in about a third of lineups or so tonight, depending on obviously any changes. With, as you noted, Garland's not playing, LeVert's not playing. We're looking at his game log right now. Rondo's gone for 40 plus fantasy points 2 out of his last 4 games. Do you expect something similar tonight?
I don't know. This could go so many different ways. Like we don't know. First of all, we don't know who's starting, and then secondly, I don't know how much the starting lineup even matters because Rondo could come off the bench and play 30 minutes. I forget which of those 2 games it was. I think there was one of those Pacers games where he played off the bench. So it's entirely unclear, I think, like how these minutes are going to go. I don't think that Cedi Osman starts at point guard because that just has not worked well for the Cavs. So it could be Brandon Goodwin. It could be Rondo. And even if it isn't Rondo, you still have to consider him. I think this is one of those situations where it comes down to the timing of the news. If we find out 20 minutes before this game starts, which it's the first game at 7, it's right at lock. If we find out at 6:40 that Goodwin's starting, maybe that's early enough. People pivot from Rondo to Goodwin, and then you want to play Rondo. If we find out at 5:40, maybe that's even earlier to the point where no one's playing Rondo. But if we find out at 6:55 that Rondo's not starting, maybe that's when you like not enough people will be able to make the swap in that short amount of time. So in that scenario, maybe that's the one where you want to play Goodwin, not Rondo. Like these can get weird because depending when the news comes, it could dictate what decision you want to make. So I think you have to be interested in the Cavs backcourt in some capacity. I'm just not really sure what I want to do with it yet.
Well, at least it'll be nice and early for Rondo, the 7 o'clock start first game. So we'll know in the relative sense of the slate, bright and early, you can plan the rest of the lineup accordingly. All right. Well, I think, again, true to form with the Thursday sports edition of the slate, we'll welcome in Reed T. Fowler to join us here as well, so we can mix in not just basketball with Matt Meiselman, but a little bit of golf will be on the way as well. Check in with what's going on at the Honda Classic, so we can bring Reed in and obviously see what's going on that front. I know you, Matt, are someone who's been following the golf closely as well, so I don't want you to get labeled as a one sport guy. You've been glued to all things Honda Classic.
Yeah, of course I have. And yeah, there's hockey tonight too. I'm just jack of all trades. I can follow all the sports. Yeah, I've been watching Louis Oosthuizen basically not able to make a par like everyone else this week. I feel like that's the main thing going on, at least as far as, the people in this room are concerned.
Yeah, don't upset Reed before he's even had a chance to come on camera and either attack or defend Louis Oosthuizen. I'm not sure what his specific approach to it is going to be.
I don't either. I'm just trying to tee it up for him. No pun intended.
No, pun fully intended.
It was very much intended.
Yeah, over at the Honda Classic right now, by the way, and round one is still in progress, at least with what I'm looking at here. You got, and Reed will correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt Kitayama, if I'm saying that correctly, I'm probably not, is in first place in the clubhouse right now at 6 under. You've got Rory Sabatini right behind him by a stroke, Daniel Berger as well, who's still on the course with a hole to go, and you got Chris Kirk, who has a hole to go. He's a couple strokes back. It's obviously, it's day one, it's round one, it's a very crowded field as you would expect. Reed, what do you think of this thing so far?
Yeah, it's playing out as a lot of us thought it would. Yeah, it's a very challenging course. Like these guys, when you take a look at how they play this course, it's, if your guy is up, Kurt Kitayama, you did pronounce that correctly, Koff, so congratulations.
All right. It's gonna be a good night.
Yeah. Is that if your guy is, at 5 under, he's sailing at 3 under, the bear trap, the, holes 4, 5, and 6 on the front 9, or the bear trap, which is 15, 16, 17, can easily make your guy go from 4 under to even or 1 over par. That's how difficult this course is. Even when there's no wind, it's difficult. When the wind picks up, it's even that much more difficult. And yeah, guys like Louis Oosthuizen shooting, I think 5 over. He birdied his last hole, making a 45-foot putt, which is not going to happen every single day. For all intents and purposes, he was one of the worst golfers out there, and he's the highest ranked in the field at 13th in the overall world golf ranking. So doesn't matter who you are. You could either be like a Kitayama, who's played a lot on the Euro Tour and the DP World Tour, and played golf at UNLV in college. You could be him and shoot 6 under, or you could be the best player
Yeah, golf and maybe even a little football before we get out of here in the next 10, 15 minutes with Sweet Tea, Reed T. Fowler. There's been, I've been, while I haven't chimed in, I've been paying attention to what is happening on Twitter. You and Moose and others, there's been a lot of Oosthuizen talk, I mean, I have to assume there's something else that you're watching very closely with relating to the Honda Classic here.
Sure. Oh yeah. Lou Oosthuizen, was one of my golfers that I picked in my the race for the Mayo Cup and the big one and done contest. And we talked ad nauseum about, and Jeff does, right? Jeff always talks about Louis Oosthuizen, and he went on and on about how much better he is in this field than everybody else, and he's one of the worst golfers today. And so of course, right, and this is true with anything, right? You can get so wrapped up in the narrative, the numbers, the world ranking. And guys can come out and you have no idea. Even sleeping in, like we always talk about this guy, if he doesn't sleep in his own bed, he's got a really bad back. He's got a custom made mattress for him that he takes on the road every golf tournament. Yeah. And if he doesn't sleep the right way, he could withdraw at a moment's notice. And so when I was on Louis Oosthuizen with Jeff this week, he comes out and he shoots 5 over par. It's like, it's a sign. It's a sign, it's a divine sign to never, ever, 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 and I repeat, ever bet Louis Oosthuizen to win a golf tournament, because it's not going to happen. But no, I mean, take a look. Daniel Berger at 5 under par. All the question marks about his back and what he was doing previous to this. He's playing extremely well. He's got a birdie putt in the last hole to tie Kitayama. So all of you first round leader Kitayama cards hoping for a Berger miss here, or if you have a Berger, leading after the first round ticket, you're hoping for a make. And that's, this course it's far from over. This tournament, this course is extremely hard. It is far, far, far from over.
It's funny, just watching the DraftKings Sportsbook odds in terms of the winner of the event, not day one, but the winner of the event, and how it bounces around like crazy. Like Daniel Berger, I want to say when I went to this page, maybe I'm making this up, but I want to say he was plus 275. And then as I looked down, I saw it was, plus 300. Then it went to 320. Now it's at 350. Obviously very little has changed on the course. It's, I mean, how do you know if you're a believer in somebody, and I'm not talking the favorite necessarily, which at the moment he far and away is, but when do you know the right time to jump in and place a bet on a guy?
Well, for this tournament, it's after this round. Sanjay M was 6 back after round 1 when he won a couple of years ago. Matt Jones last year was leading after round 1, but then he slipped down, I think a few strokes after round 2. So you want to place your bets now, because there's some guys like Gary Woodland's a prime example. He shot 3 under. He shot 1 under, but he was 3 under, 2 under heading into the 18th, and he was in the middle of the fairway, and he just fanned his ball and hit it into the water, right? And that happens more times than not on the Florida swing. There's so much water on every single hole, and so these swings, these massive swings in scores and in odds can happen at a moment's notice, because that's what this course does. You got to avoid the landmines. So, I mean, if you take a look at some of these guys who are still guys that are 1 over, if I'm just scrolling down, or even like at even par, 1 under, there's still players who hit the ball well, who just didn't make putts today, that you could easily bet. Like Joaquin Niemann could not miss a putt in the front 9. He was 4 under, leading the tournament essentially through the front 9, and then he finishes even par. I'm not saying that he's a good bet, but I'm saying that this course can easily do that to him and to the guys like Kitayama or Berger tomorrow. So there's still, you want to take a look at the guys who hit the ball well, who weren't making those putts, especially late in the day when you see the greens get a little crunchy, get a little dried out. They're going to go out in the morning time. And that's what you want to do, is you want to place bets today or tomorrow, but especially tonight or tomorrow morning, if you wake up really early, to see how these guys do, because this course, it's going to show its teeth for the guys who also play in the morning time.
Obviously, you're on almost every day with the sweat talking about golf or whatever else, but in the spirit of what we're talking about, golf, we've got golf shows multiple times a week when it comes to the slate. I don't imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, you spend a lot of time talking about golf props. We talk about obviously the favorites and, this guy versus that guy, that type of thing. But, do you ever spend any time looking at, like, right now, guys you could wager on for round 2 for bogey free rounds, to make an eagle and in round whatever it may be? Do you spend much time looking at this stuff, or are props in golf, not nearly as appealing as they would be, say, in basketball, like we were talking about earlier with Matt, or obviously football, like we talk about all the time?
I mean, matchups, I do matchups after round 1, just because you want to see how the guys are playing, right? And so if you take a look at the matchups after round 1, and specifically looking at guys who just couldn't make putts, I'll look at that more, or just, guys who I think that are better than, like Louis Oosthuizen, and I think Sanjay and Louis is a good example, right? Louis is at plus 105 against Sanjay in round 2. Like, they're playing in the same group, right? So that's just for guys, people who don't do matchups, these guys are in the same group right now. That's something you want to take a look at, right? Like, Berger played extremely well today, and so did Gary Woodland. Gary Woodland didn't play as bad as his score indicates. He played a lot better than what his score indicates. He just made a few mistakes here or there, and he made a big number, but at plus 155. So those are the things I'm taking a look at, is guys who maybe missed some putts, but who still had the ball striking to get around this course. I'll take a look at that after round 1. I rarely do matchups pre-tournament, just because I want to see how the guys are playing first to see how I want to attack that. I stay away from the 3 balls and the 6 shooters, and just stick with like outrights and round matchups, because those things are not necessarily easier to predict, but you have some context, and it's only obviously 1 round.
Anything else from the Honda Classic in general that you would like to hit on before I take us in another direction?
No, that's pretty much it. Like, if your guys are down and out, I mean, Sanjay and Louis are pretty much out, unless they have an amazing round. Like, Aaron Wise shot like a 64 or 63 last year in round 2. Like, maybe if they shoot that, then you got an outside chance. But if you take a look at Louis and Sanjay, like, you're not even going to see them, close on the board here. You have to scroll pretty far down to see a couple of those guys. But having said that, other guys like Brooks is at 2 under. I think that's a good, it's a really good spot for Brooks. He's going to go out in the afternoon, so hopefully it doesn't get too windy and too dried out. It's not over yet. This is far from over, so stay patient, because the Honda Classic, usually it takes until Sunday to win this.
A lot of interaction in the chat on YouTube between our guy Robbie Noble, who is admiring your vest, by the way, CEH and Trent, and a whole bunch of others as well. Robbie asking about a NASCAR preview for the weekend. I assume we will have Pierce Dietrich for that on the Sweat tomorrow to get into that stuff. So make sure you tune into that, obviously. But Reed, what I want to get your thoughts on, you've probably weighed in on Twitter, if not on one of our great DraftKings shows here, but away from golf, obviously the latest and not so greatest with Aaron Rodgers and what his future will be in Green Bay, which much like he has described his life in the past, it's a beautiful mystery. Reed, we don't know exactly how this is going to unfold. Will he continue playing, period? Will he be there? Will he be in Denver or somewhere else? Yeah. He's said that, no decision on the heels of that Instagram post where some wondered, is he retiring? Is he going to continue? What's he going to do? We had Diana Rossini had a report for ESPN, I think it was earlier today, saying a decision could come soon in terms of him informing Green Bay what he would like to do. How do you, short of him, if he decides to play this out like he did last year and hold the Packers hostage for a whole offseason, how do you see him handling this?
Yeah, I don't think it happens until like summertime. I don't think it has to happen. And so I think or no, it's someone else. Maybe him. It's earlier. I think didn't Danny Rossini say it's actually going to be earlier? I might be getting my quarterbacks mixed up.
Yeah, I mean, I think she said that a decision is coming soon. I'll see if I can find the exact.
Right, tweet. I think it was some. Yeah, I'm getting my QBs mixed up. At any rate,
she said Aaron Rodgers will be informing the Packers of his decision soon, per league sources. I'm told there are multiple teams with offers on the table, but of course, nothing can happen until the Green Bay Packers allow a trade.
Right, exactly. So yes, he might inform them of what he wants. Even like he might even work with them to go to a place where he wants to go. So it's not a tumultuous, handing over of Aaron Rodgers. And even though he doesn't have a no trade clause, it's probably going to be something like that. Look, like I think it's a fool's errand to try and figure out who Aaron Rodgers is and how he thinks and how he operates. People have been trying to do it and they've looked like morons because Aaron Rodgers is the only person who knows what he doesn't even talk to his family about it.
Or about anything else.
Right. Exactly. So like the only person who knows what he's going to do is, and I have the utmost respect for Diana Rossini, but the only person that knows what he's going to do is Aaron Rodgers. And we can speculate. And that's where you want to talk about in terms of where he's going to go or even the Super Bowl futures for next year. But I mean, I think that the best place for him to go is to stay put in Green Bay. And if not, it's probably Denver. But you see, look at these odds though. Like Denver was, at plus 2,200. I've seen that number, I think, move around quite a bit. And now the Green Bay Packers at plus 1,400. Yeah, boy, I mean, that's probably a bet that you could put a lot of, like, you could make a solid case for the Packers at plus 1,400.
Yeah. Well, and again, I could be making this up or, imagining this, but I feel like when we did this show just a couple of days ago, the Packers were at plus 1,200. So, it's this stuff's it's fluid right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you go to his odds of where he's going to go, right? I think the Packers are at minus 250 on like where Rodgers
minus all these options.
Right, exactly. And look, I mean, could he go somewhere else? Absolutely. But I think the best thing for him to do is to stay put and make Green Bay do as much as they can to keep him there. And if that means they got to cut some of their star players, then that means they got to cut some of their star players because Aaron Rodgers is that guy. Now, we've seen this play out, Koff, in a much lesser degree on other teams. The one that comes to mind, and not again, this is not the same situation or same quarterback, but Matt Ryan. Remember when the Falcons had a solid chance to trade this guy for a bounty, and they said, no, we're going to extend it for 2 years. What happened? A precipitous downfall. Right. Oh, and just like, and then now they can't even give them away. There's no way you could give
Calvin Ridley, who may be on the block.
Right. Exactly. To your New England Patriots. I think that's the one team that's, And look, I think that'd be something very interesting, right? Get those two. I don't know if they played together at Alabama. Probably not. I think Ridley might have been. Yeah.
I mean, maybe in practices, they overlapped on the team, but they weren't on the field together.
Right. So, and like, that's what you worry about, right? Aaron Rodgers is that, like, you're talking about Matt Ryan, who is an MVP quarterback. Look, Aaron Rodgers is much better than Matt Ryan, but you also got to be thinking about your organization. Pierce mentioned this on the Sweat today, and he made a really good point that the Packers have been extremely fortunate to only have two quarterbacks in the last 2 decades who have been Hall of Fame Super Bowl caliber quarterbacks. Now, kudos to them.
Oh, it was Joe Montana to Steve Young. Same deal.
Right. And now look at what San Francisco has been doing since then to try and find a quarterback. It's been a lot. It's been very testing and it's been unsuccessful. So if you're the Packers, you want to at least try and mortgage the future to pay for the present. Let's try and get one more Super Bowl that buys us 5 years of run rate with our fans and so forth. So I just, all of this stuff is fun to speculate on, but I think he stays put.
I asked this question though of Meiselman and Chirag on Tuesday's show, and we only have a couple minutes left, but I think it's very relevant to this Aaron Rodgers situation on both sides, quite frankly. What he decides or what, moves alter his decisions. And I feel like nationally, unless I'm wrong, I just feel like this is under discussed. Devontae Adams is a free agent. Obviously, everybody knows that he's the top free agent in the class, everything like that. But I feel like there's this presumed like, well, if Aaron Rodgers is returning to Green Bay, of course, Devontae Adams is going to return to Green Bay. And my question is, are we so sure about that? Like, if Aaron Rodgers does go back to the Packers, it's for what? 1 year, maybe 2. Devontae Adams is going to sign a 4 or 5 year deal. Is he looking to sign somewhere, Green Bay in particular? Is he looking to go back to the Packers if it means 1 year with Rodgers and 4 with Jordan Love? Or is he going to go somewhere that has an elite quarterback the whole time of that contract?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think he stays. Like, I think he signs, right? And he says, you know what? Like, this is my best chance to win another Super Bowl. Because I know the system, I know the organization, I know everything. It's very familiar to me. And, right, like, I mean, Rodgers, like if they extend him a year, I think he's got one more year left on his contract. So, they might have 2 years with Rodgers, and then they might like cut. Like I doubt they cut him next year. But maybe, Adam says, hey, look, 4 years, 80 million, whatever it's going to be, 70 million. I'll stay for 2 years and then potentially get traded, my third year. Right. Like that's how these guys think. And you're going to see it more. Like these guys are going to operate more like NBA players in terms of how they are in the trade market, how they are in saying, hey, I'm not going to play unless you do what I want. So like, could you see Adams going to a team like the Raiders? Yeah. Right. Because now you have a new coach and Josh McDaniels. Like if Carr stays there or they make a blockbuster trade to get a quarterback like a Brady, which I don't think happens, but like Russell Wilson, who knows if Aaron Rodgers potentially goes there. I don't think he does, but like you could see something like that with Adams, but I doubt it. I think he stays put too.
Last thing I want to talk about with you before we do get out of here, and we got to make it fast, is there's a report that Eric Bieniemy is going back to Kansas City as the Chiefs offensive coordinator. Obviously, he wasn't hired during this head coaching cycle. I'm not even sure. I don't recall if he had any interviews, as a matter of fact. And he's a name that, we've been talking about for years and years, obviously, with what's been a very prolific Kansas City offense. Now, there have been whispers in report form that, putting aside everything, Rooney Rule related, just that Bieniemy doesn't really interview well, that he, he hasn't been like the best candidate in terms of impressing teams in his interviews. Is he someone, when you look at what he's done in Kansas City, in terms of parlaying that obviously into a head coaching career? I mean, are you a believer that this guy's going to get an opportunity, or does it just feel like, this is where he's at?
I agree with you that he's probably not a good interviewer. Like we can have conversations, not on the show on some of the reasons why I think he's not there. He's not getting the jobs. Sure. But I also think, though, that it's sort of this curse of competency where he doesn't necessarily know how to play the game yet, which is how to interview and how to show, right, that you could be a face of a franchise. I think that's what's holding him back. Look, we know the success is there. We know that he's able to take a franchise quarterback and make him into a Super Bowl winning quarterback. We know that already. Maybe he has to go to college. Maybe he has to go back to his alma mater, University of Colorado, head coach, be a head coach there, be successful on that level, and then come up and prove to some of these owners and GMs that he can do it. But I think he's going to get one, just because you see how it is, right? Every year there's a carousel. I think he gets one.
Producer Eamon telling me he did interview with the Broncos and Saints, according to Arrowhead Pride, the SB Nation Chiefs page. There you go. I mean, I'm glad, obviously, the Bieniemy is still in the mix. He'll continue to be in the mix so long as he's in Kansas City, having the success that he's having. Obviously, it'd be great to see him turn that into a head coaching opportunity. Maybe, just maybe, his path and Aaron Rodgers' path, they collide, and then it'll just give us one giant talking point at some point in the future. But for now, we need to go. Our thanks to Eamon, to Drew, our technical director, Meiselman joining us earlier, breaking down all things NBA, and of course, football and golf with our man, Reed T. Fowler. The slate comes your way. It is 11 o'clock mornings on the DraftKings YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter pages. Make sure you check it out. The Sweat and then the slate, of course, after the 4 o'clock Madden Sim, Monday through Friday, right around 5:15, which is where we will be tomorrow. So make sure you check us out. We thank you and have a great night. Reed, see you later.
Later, bud.